In high school, some close friends of mine were having a typical night out, but they had some haters, and after one of the more aggressive guys escalated the situation, the whole group wound up down a dark alley to settle it by shooting the one. It was never a fair fight. At one point during the scuffle, one of my friends took off his belt and just started whipping it through the crowd, hit the nape of this mammoth figure, drew blood from his neck. He slowly turned around, as the story goes, faced my friend and whispered, "I like shit like that." What happened next taught me a life lesson in loyalty, one that I've carried on my face to this day. There are many things to discuss about that night, including its bloody aftermath. But for our purposes, the most notable being the fact that I wasn't there. I don't remember what I was doing or why, but my absence left an indelible impression on my friends, who never let me forget that I was MIA that night. It never really affected our interaction, but something was different. Somehow our relationship had changed. Like, there had been a breach of trust. The situation still made me think about my understanding of loyalty, especially in light of what ended up happening afterwards. So on another night out, which I was able to attend, a group of maybe 4 or 5 of us were out. Let's just say we were feeling good that night and headed to the local hangout spot. On the way, we spotted 2 stunning young women dressed for a night out, sitting on a bench. 2 of my friends struck up a conversation with them, and everything seemed to be going just fine, when a couple of guys that were up to no good started making trouble in the neighborhood. Always wanted to say that. Anyway, 2 guys appear and interrupt the conversation. I was standing a little ways away and could see that something was brewing, especially considering which of my friends was doing all the talking. I approached the scene and recognized one of the guys interrupting was Alejandro. We'd gone to middle school together and were pretty friendly. We shook hands and he called me up on what was going on. He was having a night out with his cousin and their girlfriends, and he'd appreciate it if I could convince my friends to back off. Reasonable enough. I approached my friends, who were still engaged in a very animated discussion with this guy and the girls who were siding with him, and tried to defuse the situation. It was already too late. Train had already left the station. Their adolescent egos had already been bruised. No way to back down now. With my friends unwilling to lose face and Alejandro trying to enjoy his night, what was the solution? You guessed it. Alejandro and one of my friends were gonna shoot the one to settle it. How this seemed a reasonable solution to all parties involved still mystifies me to this day. Even Alejandro was in a rush to just get it over with. Before I knew it, we were walking across the street towards a dark alley. In the time it took us to go from the park bench to the alley, no more than 5 minutes, mind you, what had been an empty alley was now teeming with guys of all shapes and sizes. I didn't even know there were that many people in town that night. The crowd parted as Alejandro and his cousin walked through. Undaunted, we walked in right after them and the circle closed in behind us. Long story short, there was never a one-on-one, or maybe there was, but I was never really in a position to pay attention on account of the fact that I was punched in the face within minutes of stepping in and pandemonium erupted. I remember striking the guy who hit me and waiting for him to either go down or fight back. He did the latter. So we just stood there wailing on each other, punch to face to punch, until someone ran by and grabbed me and we ran off. My left cheek was completely torn open. I bled onto my shirt and pants. I was bleeding so much that I was leaving small puddles of blood as we escaped. I ended up throwing away the pillow that I slept on because it was completely drenched. Ultimately needed 13 stitches to sew the left half of my face back, and I carry a permanent reminder of that night. What does this have to do with loyalty? Well, to some, that is the epitome of loyalty. The willingness to stand by your friends at all costs. For some, the cause for which you're doing this is important. For others, the cause is irrelevant as long as you're standing up for those who would do the same for you if you need them to. But is that all that loyalty really boils down to?
All I want is loyalty, loyalty, loyalty.
Here do I swear fealty and service to Gondor, in peace or war, in living or dying.
I said I ride for my niggas, die for my niggas, slide for my niggas, I'ma sigh for my niggas, I cry for my niggas, never lie to my niggas.
What is it that moves history? Is it trust? Loyalty? No, it is power.
So Google defines loyalty as the quality of being loyal to someone or something. For a more profound treatment of the subject, Philip Pettit writes in The Paradox of Loyalty, the ideal of loyalty is at the heart of common sense morality. That morality highlights our special obligations to ourselves and one another, and duties of personal loyalty to other people bulk large amongst these. They are the duties that we owe to other people in virtue of more or less intimate bonds, whether bonds of family, friendship, comradeship, collaboration, or whatever. Even more compelling for me was R.T. Allen's description in When Loyalty Meant No Harm, in which he specifically defines loyalty as the fulfillment of what is due or what is required by its object or target, which may or may not be a total commitment. He later defines the object of loyalty as something that must be either a concrete or personal entity to which one stands in some sort of relation, pledge of service to something which is not a concrete entity, but that it requires a promise or expectation of some sort of service which can either be given or refused. Thus, as a working theoretical definition of loyalty, this would do well. But in practice, loyalty manifests itself to the degree you're loyal to yourself. Even if it's loyalty to a cause, an ideal, an organization, your loyalty in each of those situations is an extension of your loyalty to yourself. Insofar as the things you're abstractly loyal to are really just external elements that you consider really part of your identity. For example, I believe I'm the kind of person that my family can depend on in times of need, even in situations in which there's been friction between me and a given family member. I believe that that norm represents who I am. That is the kind of person, that is the kind of principle, that is the kind of reflection that is essentially an extension of who I think of myself to be. This is a quality that I deem consistent with my image of self. So I suggest that the things we're loyal to in an abstract sense, mind you, when loyalty is properly being exercised, more on that later, are the things that we believe reflect us. The question then becomes, does a given act of loyalty comport or resonate with your ideals? Is this action consistent with who you are? Are the objects of your loyalty consistent with who you are? Because if you're unable to answer these questions, you're not only failing to exercise loyalty, you're actually being servile or sycophantic. You are devoted to a cause, a person, or an object, not out of a sense of understanding of your commitment, but by default, lack of self-esteem, fear. Google definition of servile is having or showing an excessive willingness to serve or please others. The Merriam-Webster dictionary defines it as of or befitting a slave or menial position. I use it in contrast to loyalty because it describes behavior that is very similar in form but distinct in motivation. Servility can require the same kinds of costs and sacrifices as loyalty without a comparable purpose. There is intention behind an act of loyalty. A commitment, even at great personal cost, is not only warranted but sought out. Servility, on the other hand, is almost like a reactionary compulsion. In practice, someone being servile might look like they're being loyal, but the motivations are completely different. And yet they engender and almost require the same outward manifestation of commitment and the same cost. Do not confuse servility and loyalty. This distinction would have made all the difference for me so many years ago. I misunderstood that loyalty is an affirmative commitment. I thought that simply standing up for my friends, no matter what, was an exhibition of my loyalty to them. And I paid a physical and financial price for it. Had I asked myself, had my friends earned my loyalty? They might have, but did I know that? Had I determined that on my own? Or had I just accepted a definition of loyalty foisted upon me by the media and my surroundings? The key is recognizing that exercises of loyalty are an expression of value, an assertion of the individual in favor of the object of that loyalty. It must be respected. It must be exercised when merited. And a failure to recognize the stakes or the significance of engaging in an act of loyalty, either by the object of the commitment or by the subject, is simply engaging in an act of servility. With that understanding, I could have withheld my support from the actions my friends took because they were inconsistent with the values I espouse. Standing up for your own values is an expression of loyalty in and of itself. It's an expression of loyalty to yourself, but also to the people you support. It is saying, I support you when you need me, for reasons and causes I value, including your own, but you will not squander my commitment to you for reasons that show a blatant disregard for my loyalty to you. To do so would be turning my commitment to a servile exercise. So do stand up for the people and causes that matter to you, even if the principles might not. But do so as long as you are okay with and understand that that is what you are doing, because that aligns with who you are. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.